Hello, everybody, and happy Monday. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. Welcome to the Mount Mansfield Unified Union School Board meeting. Today is Monday, October 13th, and we are here at Brewster Pierce Memorial School in Huntington. I'm going to run through the agenda and see if we need to make any modifications. We will vote on adding a new board member from Huntington at this meeting. However, maybe we did it this way on purpose. We did not. Community comments will follow that. We have a principal report from Michelle. We will have a monitoring report, our first of this school year. I hope everyone had a chance to take a look at that. It's got some lovely detail in it. We will have a follow-up update on the community concerns that were raised about us at our last meeting, approving our minutes, any committee updates, and any other business. And included in the committee updates is choosing a delegate for the annual business meeting from the VSBA. Any adjustments, changes, modifications to the agenda? Okay. Then Katie, can you take us through a roll call, please?
Sure. I know how to say all of your first names. And this is not in alphabetical order. Steve Diglio. Ethan Maurer.
Here.
Helen Stoddard. Here. Edie Granning.
I'm here.
Sandra Limoges.
Here.
Stuart Marjo. Susan Lillick.
I'm here.
Kyle Magida.
Here.
Tara Arneson.
Present.
Allison Conant. Heather Chadwick. Here. Edie Nelson. Here. James Granzow.
Here.
Kevin Campbell.
Here.
Lisa Pollock.
Here.
Eli Wilmette. Wimmett. Eli, how do I say your last name? Wimmett.
Yes, I'm here.
Usually my right-hand man. And that is it.
Great. And we do have a new student who will be joining us at our next board meeting.
Yes.
Jack. We'll let him introduce himself. Great. Thank you. We had a board member resign midterm, and so we did the interviews and all of the process. And so when Gail resigned, Helen has already introduced herself, yes, to the board a couple of meetings ago. And so we just need a motion to approve a board member, and then Helen will run again. She can only, when we appoint, just to be clear for everyone, we can only appoint till the next vote. And so the next vote is in March. And so at that point, Helen would have to be elected to stay on the board.
For a remaining 1 year, correct?
Or whatever the rest of the term is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we appoint Helen Stoddard for the open seat for Huntington.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. You're officially here. We're grateful. Community comments. Brett's got that. We've got that door. Any community comments, either remote or in the room? Allison.
Yeah, and so Steve.
Everything's good. Yes. Community comments will be limited to no more than 5 minutes per person. The board requests that participants clearly state their name, place of residence, and topic of comment. The school board will take no action on items raised during community comments, and dialogue and exchanges will be for clarification.
Thanks. Sorry that you'll have to turn around. As you guys, Stacy Lang, Underhill, couple topics. As you guys know, I've been trying to be more engaged with the board and participating in the meetings, but it's been pretty hard to really understand what happens in the meetings. So I'm requesting that the district and the board host a community policy governance training. I think that having this type of training available to the public will enable us to engage in a more meaningful way and really to be able to support the board. So I want to formally request that. I don't know what that means or looks like. That's my comment. And I did also want to say a couple of things. John, your report is 23 pages of like badass data. So thank you. It was really great to read and to like get insights into what we've seen last year. How do we compare it to national averages? And, you know, one thing that I would love to see today from the folks that are presenting their reports is when we think about, you know, what those gaps are, what we're trying to achieve, that we don't just say like, this is what we're going to do, but we talk about how we're going to do it. So we can really get insights into, you know, what is the roadmap and the plan for where we are today and where we want to go. So those are just the few comments that I had today. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Crystal Granzo, not Zhao, Granzo like Bo, and I'm a mom of a second grader and a third grader.
Crystal, where do you live?
I live in Underhill, sorry, but we're at Jericho Elementary in the Spanish immersion program, and so we've been joining, but and love meeting y'all. We're trying to be more engaged, so we're more, the stakeholders are here and part of all this process as well. And I think a lot of the time, board members don't really see the super positive things that are going on in our schools with your own eyes or hear about it. And I just want you to know that we have the best third grade teacher in the Spanish immersion program from HOMAC does, Profe O, who is incredibly data driven, which is, as I just am lost without that. And when I go to that parent teacher conference, it was so encouraging. Not for the first time in our year there, but to really feel supported with a kid who needs a lot of support, that this woman will reach out, check in, not just with bad news, but with good news first. You know, she praises him and she works with him. I don't know all the ins and outs of restorative behaviors that we have, but she's trained in it and she explains it well, and she explains it to the third grader well, who is able to say, oh, that's why my brain does that. And he's thinking and comprehending and connecting in a way that makes me very proud to be part of Jericho Elementary. So thank you all for a Profe O.
Thank you. Any other community comments? Anybody on Michelle, I'm going to turn it over to you. Why don't you do a quick introduction of yourself?
My name is Michelle Patnode, and I'm the principal here at First of Years. So a couple of things I talked about in my board report was our new reading program. So last year we spent time diving into different curriculums around the state we visited. We talked with different schools, curriculum directors around different reading programs that would work for us. So we eventually adopted ARC, American Reading Company, and we implemented that this year. And we are noticing a lot of student engagement with the text, which is really awesome. Students are building background knowledge through the different texts that they're using, they're engaged, and the teachers are seeing meaningful growth. And then, so that program, we are using K4. So our preschoolers are still engaging in science of reading work, also using Integrity for some phonemic understanding. And then I just wanted to also highlight, we put in a new playground over the summer. And that's at the end of my report. And it just allows us to think about the accessibility of all students. So our youngest learners have a safe, developmentally appropriate place to play. So we utilize the forest a lot. We have a great community forest, but it wasn't accessible to all of our students. So we put in this great preschool playground and they now have lots of options. Any question about anything in between the first and last thing?
Go ahead.
I know that we kind of discussed it on the tour, but with the bump in enrollment in the pre-K, how do you foresee managing? Are you going to continue with multi-grade classrooms, or are you going to spread out to single grade classrooms, or what does that look like?
I think we'll probably have a mixture of both. In the younger grades, it is nice to have single grade classrooms when you can, just because of all of phonics and phonemic awareness. But also in a small school, the mixed classrooms are really nice because students get to engage with different peers. They have role models. So I envision having both classes in the future.
And there was clearly space here. So.
Yeah. We have room, luckily. Yes. Yeah.
On that note, do we have a sense of the size of the classes coming up behind the two floors? I don't know if we collect data or have any information.
So next year's kindergarten right now is looking at like 33 students with 53 and 4-year-olds potential for the preschool program next year.
Yeah, we don't know beyond that.
Oh, well, we have census data beyond that, but I just really focused on the next 3 years of kindergarten.
It's really hard to, we always want like a 5-year projection and the department's like, we could give you one, but we're guessing. So.
And then I guess I have a question that you probably don't even know the answer to, but is the growth attributed to new families moving into the district, or is it more just larger families?
So I'm interested in your perspective that I haven't been answered to. So
we did have several families move in over the summer. And I think we had some older families move out and younger families move in.
So that's consistent with the trend from across the district, which is we're seeing lots of late summer registration with families purchasing homes and moving in, typically into the entry grade for the school that children are registered for. So in those pre-K, K1 years for elementary schools, 5 for middle school, and 9 for the high school. We see it. We did a review of the past 3 years, and we see it across all grades, but there's a high concentration in those grade levels.
We had 7 new students like in July alone, which is, 7 doesn't sound like a lot, but when we had 113 kids, that's a pretty high percentage.
11% of the student body at Underhill registered within 3 weeks of the start of the school year in the lower grades.
And district-wide, I think that's one potentially have numbers. Do we know if they're in Chittenden County, in-state, out-of-state? Do we know?
So when you look at our demographic modeling and you compare it to the rest of the county, we have lagged the uptick in student registrations and student enrollment gain that some of our neighboring districts have seen, but that's not universal. There's a lot going on with district enrollment across the state now. Some places are capturing students and growing, and other districts are shrinking and cutting. So
do we have a sense of where we're capturing them from? If it's local.
Our students were local, Vermont students.
Okay.
Anecdotally, our Huntington Youth Soccer program is very heavily skewed to the 2, 3, 4-year-olds. So I can tell you there are a lot of students we don't see here yet at Brewster Pierce, but who are enrolled in our Huntington Youth Soccer program and are active in the town.
Sorry, I didn't mean to steal the principal's report from you.
No, everybody can share in the principal's report.
I would just, sorry.
Go ahead. The other question.
I was going to say, there is no real new building going on in Huntington, so any sort of change is really happening with turnover in houses.
Because I was wondering where all this people are finding homes.
But that would make sense, right? It's an aging population and maybe something's changing.
Downsizing and people.
Michelle, the last time we got a report from you, you were the interim principal. It's been a year. How's it been for you?
It's been awesome. Huntington is a very special place. We have a lot of great family involvement. The kids are the best. We have all of this natural resource, and I'm super excited I got to stay.
We're very excited you did stay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say your report was really fun to read. I really appreciate all that you're doing here.
I set the bar really high for my other principals. They're going to love me.
We appreciate it. It was a great report. I also took a look at your school improvement plan for 25-26, and to address chronic absenteeism, you had hoped to launch a proactive family engagement campaign. Where are you at with that?
So we put a lot in our summer mailings. We did a couple big things about the importance of coming to school, and we've been looking at it in our guiding coalition, pulling absences every week to make sure that if there is somebody who's coming in late, that we are on top of it.
Could you just give a little more detail about the guiding coalition, like who's on that, what do they do?
So my guiding coalition, we have teachers, special educators, the guidance counselor. We meet twice a month and we look at different things. They help me write the CIP, our improvement plan. We review the data that we are looking at in the improvement plan to make sure we're making gains. We also look at things that we want to bring to the school. Today, there was a SEL survey that another school uses that we looked at as a guiding coalition to see, do we want to bring it to our school? Is it giving us important data? Is there anything we want to change? So we do work like that.
So you mentioned the new reading program.
Yeah,
So that is here or throughout the district?
throughout the district.
And did the Agency of Education support you at all as you were looking to improve the reading in our district?
The Agency of Education support us.
So, I mean, this is one of my things that I keep an eye on, right? Like, if the agency has a list of programs that are making a difference and doing well and tracking and all of that, it would really simplify the choice for you and make your job much easier, I assume.
That would
They
have
have
been
a
great.
list of the screeners, and so we had already gotten our screener by the time they had that, and so we kind of backwards audit it, if you will, and it's met those. But at the time when we were looking for curriculum, I don't recall there being any issues.
Thank you.
They did have a checklist that we utilized. So when we met as a curriculum council, throughout the district, and we decided on programs that we wanted to go. And the AOE did have a checklist of these are some things you want to look at in your literacy program. We modified and used that when we were looking.
Thank you. Other questions?
Any question? Yeah, Sean.
I was just curious about how the students on IEPs compare to the other elementary schools. And to me, at first, it seemed high because of the enrollment numbers.
I think proportionately we have higher needs than the other schools.
Okay. Thanks. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yep.
Any other questions?
On those IEPs, are they skewed towards any particular category of need, or is it the same distribution, just bigger number?
Yeah, I don't think we're skewed in any way. I have often wanted to dig in and see do people move to Huntington because we do a really great job wrapping around kiddos, or is there some other reason? But yeah, we are proportionally higher.
There is anecdotal data that people move to our district for our special education programs. So
We're awesome.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here. You're welcome to stay. You're welcome to head out. I know you have a drive. So.
And I have an audiobook. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
Andrew, John, there is a monitoring report 1.1 knowledge and skills. So this is an ends policy report, as everyone is aware. Thanksgiving. Student outcomes.
Yes. So I give a little bit of a preface, and I'll walk through the report at a high level, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. Andrew, so I put the report together, and then Andrew and I worked through it together. A lot of these areas are areas of his direct responsibility in the district, and he has an awful lot more context than I do, especially being new to the district. So he's here if we need to go deeper than I can in any one area. So what I did at the start was I took the framework from previous monitoring reports as long as we've been getting them here as a district. I got feedback from all of you on what you were looking for in the monitoring reports. I also workshopped this as a draft around with other superintendents that utilize policy governance, and then got feedback from the trainer that many of us are in a class with right now through VSBA on policy governance. And so the three big pieces were to do a little bit more around the interpretation piece and get to a clearer statements there, to embed data in the report itself instead of as a link or as an appendix. And then in addition to incorporating more data, also being more explicit about the analysis of that data in the report, so that we didn't have pieces that were written but then had, for clarity, had to be talked about. So I've tried to do justice to all of that feedback in the report. The result is a report that is longer than you all have gotten historically, and I hope you all give me feedback on that. One thing that's important too about the monitoring report is, as the chief accountability measure for you all as a board, it's really hard for me not to write more about our improvement efforts as we're doing this. That's not traditionally part of a monitoring report, but you will notice that I did embed some of that work in the report itself, and I did call out at the beginning where you could find that information in the report. I will just own that's a personal issue for me. It feels really hard to get to a place where we're talking about equity gaps we have as a district and then not jump to at least references to the work we have going on to address that. I think the first piece that I just wanted to highlight is in the interpretation section, those three pieces about compliance: one, exceeding state and national averages; two, having positive growth trajectories across the district. And then the third one is that 80% proficiency benchmark. That's a general rule of thumb that shows up over and over again in research about school effectiveness. And you could certainly find studies that place that number a little higher or a little lower, but meta-analysis that Marzano and others that are credible network have done reference 80% as the number. So that's what I came back to. I will also just say, because I don't think this data has been shared with the board before, but the screener that Andrew was referencing earlier has a growth measure embedded in it, which is super useful for us to judge whether or not we as a district are growing at an appropriate rate. And so the guidance from Star Renaissance, who developed the metric, is that really anything 50% or higher. So if you have 50% or more of your students above that 35th level, the SGP, it's referenced throughout the report, that would indicate that students are learning on a whole across the system. Students are learning more than a year's worth of material in a year between tests. And so that basically means you're beating the curve on a progressive assessment. So we utilize these assessments. Progressive assessments start in the fall. And so if 80% of the kids were on benchmark in the fall and everybody learned an entire year's worth of material by the time they were assessed again in the spring, you would expect 80% of students to be on grade level or meeting the benchmark again, and that would be a success. Our data here is telling us that we're growing year over year, or from beginning of the assessment period to the end of the assessment period, so we're beating that curve. It was just a celebration to call out. I think the key piece when I look at the equity analysis that I included, which is on page 13, we have equity gaps, which we knew and we've talked about before as a board. These are very specific ways to quantify some of that gap. I will acknowledge that there's no kind of metric that's perfect for doing that. But I did think some clarity was important. So when we talk about economically disadvantaged students, the federal definition of that term would be students who qualify for free or reduced lunch. I just want to be clear about that. I also really struggle because in the state of Vermont and in school districts in Vermont, when we talk about race, we don't have a unified term that we use. The Agency of Education does not use a term to aggregate students by race. What they actually do is actually just report out on individual. But they also have a rule that prevents us from reporting out any demographic or any information about demographic groups of 10 or less. And so the problem that we run into doing equity work like this is we actually have in some of these groups such a small number of students that we're not able to use the reporting structure that the Agency of Education recommends, which then means that we don't necessarily have a term that is accurate when we talk about this issue. And so what I would do generally in those cases, as I did here, is I go to the Federal Department of Education to look at the terms they use. So the term that they use when they aggregate racial information is students of color and white students. And so that's the formula that I've used here. And then the last piece, as was mentioned earlier, we have a equity gap when we look at students who are receiving special education services and qualify with a IEP, which is individual education plan, and students who do not. I will actually say this didn't make it in here as an actual groups that the two areas where we're growing the fastest, so where students are making the most progress, are actually in the groups that we're trying to close the equity gap with. So all three of these categories are growing faster than our groups as a whole, and that really I think is reflective of the MPSS work that's happening across the district for students with gaps. Not necessarily targeting students based off demographic data, but targeting students that have a demonstrated gap that we can quantify and then working to remediate that. And then the other group is actually our students who are already exceeding the benchmark. So many of you were on the tour we received in the building, and we saw the learning lab and Heather, what's the name of the other space? It's not Sunshine Room. Yes, thank you. So those two spaces are spaces that are used to make sure that each kid is getting individualized or small group instruction. So students who need to have gaps remediated, students who are on grade level, and also students who are already exceeding grade level. And so that practice that we have across the district shows up in those growth rates, which is something
we're having some camera issues, and so everybody can hear us just fine, but we're just trying to get the video going.
Okay.
Ooh, the video just gave no audio.
Can you hear us now?
Yes. Yeah, keep talking.
Okay. Perfect.
Thank you.
So the other piece that we had talked about as a board was including reporting on innovative programming, like the Spanish immersion program, in our normal monitoring reports. And so you'll see there's a special section in here related to that kind of captures some of the work that's happened in the past year, and some of the specific changes that are happening as a result for that. So at the end, you can see I have the conclusion that we are in compliance with 1.1 based off those three criteria that I reviewed at the beginning, consistently exceeding state and national averages, demonstrating positive growth trajectories across grade levels and content areas, and then ongoing progress toward that 80% benchmark.
Any questions on the monitoring report? I mean, we can do this two ways, sorry. We can have a motion to approve it and then do our questions, which is probably the right way to do it. So can I get a motion to approve the monitoring?
So moved.
Thank you, Kevin. Any second? Thank you, Heather. Any discussion on the monitoring report?
The whole page.
Yeah,
I'm trying to steal my notes.
You have a whole page of notes. Would you like to go first?
No, I got a whole page, so I can wait.
Anybody have any discussion, questions?
Well, I will say, John, I've been on the board for about a year and a half, and I feel like I have more clarity as to how our district is doing in all these areas because of your report. I thought it was extremely helpful, as well as looking at the school improvement plans. And so I'm grateful for a 23-page report. No problem. Yeah. And in thinking about the 80%, that's a lofty goal. Do you think it's achievable within, 2 to 5 years or whatever? And do you feel like our district, and certainly Andrew may know this as well, but do you feel like we have a good sense of what's working? And are we devoting more resources to what's working so as to, ensure that we can achieve that goal?
Yeah. So I have a response, and then of course, if Andrew wants to chime in, he knows more about this than almost anybody in the district. So for me, I'm still learning the district, so I don't want to make a statement about a timeline to get us to a benchmark just yet. I think for us, there's a really promising area of looking at growth through grade 8. And so I'll just say we don't utilize the STAR assessment at the high school level. There's lots of research actually about the inaccuracy of those broad screening assessments when you get to the high school level, but through 8th grade, they have pretty convincing data on reliability. And so that actually gives us a framework for looking at growth, which is what I think is actually most important when we look at groups of students. So I think that's a really promising area. And as a district, you all know we've done a tremendous amount of work in the past 5 years in all of these areas around MTSS and student support structures, literacy instruction, as we heard from Michelle earlier. And the math program is actually still new to the district as well. So we have lots of movement happening kind of across the board, and I expect that only to increase our momentum. And as part of that work, we have teacher teams and coaching teams and administrators who are finding all sorts of things that are and aren't working. But I don't know that I can give you a comprehensive answer on that. I don't know if you have any thoughts, Andrew.
No, I think you touched on all the really important parts. I think the MTSS work has been probably the most crucial to both, ensure that the tier 1 core instruction is as robust as it can be and it's meeting the needs of most students in the classroom, while also ensuring that we have layers of support to provide, support for students when they need it in the specific areas that they need that support in. And we've been really working hard to continue to really refine and improve those systems across all of our schools. I think, to your point, like identifying what's working and what's not working, what I really like about this district is that we collaborate so well. So I don't think Michelle mentioned it, but the 5 elementary principals, they meet, I think, might be every week, it might be every other week, just like a short little 20-minute meeting. And we also have other meeting structures where principals and our instructional coaches get together, but we are collaborating constantly and learning from each other. So when we find something, for instance, they've done a lot of great work at Richmond Elementary around social emotional learning and created this really amazing social emotional learning handbook that other schools are now adopting. So we've done a good job to highlight the things that are working, and the educators and administrators are kind of really lean into curiosity and are able to kind of pull in new ideas and new strategies that they see that are working in other places. So that's a massive strength in our district.
Thank you. Andrew, can I ask a question just to follow up on that? Do we have a district data coach, or would that be the instructional?
We don't have a district data coach. So we have a data manager. So that person manages all our data.
Yep.
But our instructional coaches and really everyone, data is kind of part of the work that we do. So our coaches work closely with teachers and with our administrators on data. And so it really is embedded into everything that we're doing. And that's our core focus for this year, is to center data in all the work that we're doing.
Yeah. I wonder how teachers are supported to kind of gather, analyze, and then use that data to inform.
Yeah, the instructional coaches, I probably mentioned it at a former meeting before, but knowing about a lot of the other districts in the state, there might be a district that has a better instructional coach team than we do, but I don't think so. Our coaches, first off, we have a very strong team with expertise in multiple areas, multiple grade levels. Many of them have been with the district for a while, and they know quite a bit about data. So they serve a lot of different roles. And one of those is helping teachers in their professional learning communities to look at, say, STAR data or other local assessment data, and to analyze it and then determine what needs to happen next. So instructional coaches are key to that work.
I would also say having the time for teachers to meet as collaborative teams to look at data with each other, because the access to the coaches is transformational in that regard, but so is access to your fellow coworkers to go and sit with the problem or look at assessments together and figure out how to respond. Super appreciate early release time, which I know is always an issue for communities like ours to navigate.
So mine's a little more specific around the declines. I know you mentioned it was due to the declines in proficiency rates due to COVID. I'm looking at page 19. I would think that wouldn't the biggest decline be closer to COVID back in 2023 instead of the trend? It's trending down in proficiency as we get further out of COVID. So when I look at that, it seems like we're not making up the gap that the kids lost from COVID.
You're looking at math and science.
Yeah.
So there's an interest, and I could go on about this for a long time. So I'll try very hard to keep it. Yes. So there's a couple issues here when we look at the longitudinal trends with the state assessment. The first is that 2023 was the first year for the new assessment system. The provider for that system would tell you that administration and the data that produced as a result was flawed and not statistically or not reliable and valid. The state hasn't come out and said that. There's a good reason for that, because we're required by federal law to provide a reliable and valid assessment at the state level. But the provider has said that the data is flawed. And actually, Andrew, I'm sure you have the same issues that we had in my last district with cleaning that data, but it took more than 6 months. That doesn't mean the data is bad. It just means they can't guarantee that it is as reliable as the other years. And part of the problem was at the last minute, they changed how the accommodations were accessed by students with disabilities. And so they basically took a whole suite of accommodations that normally you would have to go through a process to get access to, and everybody got access to them to take the assessment. So it's actually not surprising to me that the scores for our district for that year are slightly better than the years that followed when students lost access to those accommodations. That was for the teachers that went through that process. That was a really stressful couple of weeks as things seem to change constantly. But the other thing that we're seeing is actually students with foundational gaps from the COVID years are experiencing more and more struggle as they progress in their curriculum because they have foundational gaps. And the impact of that actually grows over time unless we're able to get in there and remediate that. The other challenge with remediating foundational skills is that as students get older, and this holds true especially for reading, but in all content areas, generally after third grade, interventions become much more resource intensive. Anywhere from 25 to 200% more time is required, depending on where we are on that timeline after third grade. And so time is, when I say time, is both the student's time in a schedule that is very full, but also resource time, teachers, interventionists, and materials. So that's my take on that trend that you're pointing out there.
So should we hope to see this trend go up, or do you foresee it still trending down for a few years before it goes up?
Well,
until we get past the whole COVID cohort.
It's very hard to predict, but I would say the growth that we've seen. So for us, the STAR assessment is designed to be a predictor of what we're going to see on state assessments. That's one of its purposes. For me, it's really all about learning. We have growing evidence that students are learning, and our growth rates are exceeding that 1 year at a time measure that I was talking about earlier. So for me, that data is going to show up soon in our state testing. I can't guarantee exactly when. Yeah.
I'll go since I'm just
I'm whittling it down.
My question is he crossing anything?
No, nothing has been crossed off.
In my own mind's eye, it's all getting crossed off.
I can't read anything. Just a bunch of scribbles.
Oh, perfect.
So, good job on this report. I think as a board, we probably went, I feel like we went many years without seeing this report, this monitoring report, because we started with the easy ones. I think you started with the hard one and did a really fantastic job of writing it. Taking serious your interpretation of the policy. I could follow your kind of thought process. There is a but, it'll come. And
just make sure there's a sandwich.
I think it's just more like an open face. I don't think I'm gonna end with the positive. But
I was just about to say, soak this in because you don't get compliments from Kevin very often. It's not true.
Decided to come to the meeting. The summary was good. I liked the draft press release at the end, or the summary or whatever was good. But here's the but. There's a lot of focus, a lot of pages on assessment data, assessments that our district doesn't get to write. Right. So these are somebody else's assessments that we have to do. And we do so many assessments, I don't think we'd want to do more assessments for our own, but the amount of time spent on the report or the amount of pages on assessments would suggest that the ends policy is to do well on assessments. And, we have the best high school in the state, apparently. When we compare ourselves to the state average, it's not I don't think where we should be comparing to. And the national average is just, who knows, compared to the world. I'm not sure what that means. So I think we need to hold ourselves to a standard for our assessments that reflects our ends goals, not what other districts are doing. And I felt like with the data that you did have from VSAC, which was recent, 2024, you surveyed, or VSAC surveyed for us, our college students. Yep. But we don't have any data in the report for career and community. Are we doing what the community wants us to do? And are we making our students successful in the community? We're kind of using these assessments as indicators or some kind of surrogate for that data. And that's where, if I were to challenge you, I would say on the next time around to try to figure out is the test, the assessments, correlated to the ends policies, or is it just convenient? And is there any other data that we can get that would help us really get right down to it? Are our students being successful in their careers and in the community?
So can I push back a little bit? When you're, just for clarity for me, when you're looking at who we compare ourselves to pick the state in the nation that's doing the best and use that rather than the average scores across the US as we're looking at scores. If we're trying to be up here, we should be measuring ourselves against this and not against this. Is that what you're saying?
I like the trend data more than the comparisons.
Always.
Are we improving? And the data says we are improving.
So for you, it's too many pages about how we're doing against a standard that isn't high enough and not enough detail into how we're getting where we're going.
Or how are we getting to where we want
Yeah.
to go? Yeah. The data is informative.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not relevant. It is relevant, but I'm just saying is there anything wrong? And then I guess the other part, I have one other, but do you want to clarify a question, Greg?
No, I'll just say that the kind of data collection that you're talking about is something I've had an interest in for a long time. And there's models out there for how to do it. The problem is that they're all really resource intensive. So I can share when I was at the consulate school, there's a huge focus on that. But they had an office of 6 people for a school district our size that basically all they did was a combination of alumni relations and data collection. And that we had great, no, not even the development part, just the actual, because people aren't going to answer a survey if they don't feel like they have a connection with you. So we had these 6 people whose job it was to just basically keep people engaged in some fashion, and then at the right time ask them the questions that we wanted them to answer. We were able to do some other fun things with that, but that's actually a really expensive proposition. It is based off what independent schools, big independent schools in the U.S. do, like Phillips Andover and Exeter and a few others, but all of those models really look like that. VSAC was supposed to be an answer to that dilemma for us, but the challenge is just that they don't get all our kids, they get a sampling, and my understanding is actually the sample size keeps decreasing, and so I'm not sure. I can't speak to that accurately, but I don't know that could ever fill that niche for us.
Yeah, it felt indicative, but not significant enough or substantial enough to really say, yeah, we can hang our hat on that one.
It is our seniors. It's not after folks. It's the seniors in our. So I wonder if our advisories could be an avenue to get that information where we have those connections to students.
John, when you were at schools that were engaging with alumni on that, what were the types of things they were surveying them about? What were the measures or the domains that they were making inquiry around?
So we had a survey that was adapted, I think, from a Phillips Exeter survey that they administered. And so basically you connect with so you don't connect with each kid every year on the survey questions, but you can connect on a frequency that gets reduced over time. And you're asking about preparation for what they had selected for their post-high school experience, asking them to reflect back on the quality of the relationships that they had while they were there, and then a suite of more specific questions. But it is really designed to be short and a snapshot for how students felt their education prepared them for the world, and looking back if they had specific suggestions that we could look at and incorporate.
And just to follow up a few more points.
No, it's just my shoulder.
Okay. In addition to surveying the students, also maybe surveying the community businesses, right? To kind of assess, is our technical track on track for what's needed locally? Because many of us would love to see, students stay in the district, or at least in the surrounding towns. and not knowing if what we're training our students is sufficient for what our communities need. Doesn't resonate in the report today. Last comment on the free and reduced lunch as an indicator for the socioeconomic divide. Do we feel like that metric is accurate in our district today?
Yeah, so this is an interesting thread to pull at, because the lever to feel like that number was accurate used to be students needed to fill it out if they wanted the free or reduced lunch. And now, because we have a universal meals program, students don't, the assumption is that families don't feel it necessary to provide that information. I would have to go back and look at what our return rate is. I remember thinking it was pretty strong. But the reality is, historically, almost all our free and reduced lunch participation before universal meals came from what we call direct cert, which is this program where by students who are eligible because they are receiving other services or automatically eligible for free and reduced lunch. That information has always been provided to us by the state. And then we were actually capturing very few students as a state in schools. I can't speak specifically about Mount Mansfield, but as a state, we were capturing very few students in addition to those numbers who are eligible for free and reduced lunch. So I feel like it is accurate. I feel like the economically disadvantaged term is not very accurate, because that makes it sound like better than it is. Because if you look at the income required to be eligible for those programs, it's very low. And so I imagine that we actually have a huge chunk of families that are struggling but don't meet that criteria. And we don't have a way to measure that as a district, which is, I think, a challenge.
Or state.
Exactly. I will see what happens with this new data collection method that the state is using to get, or wants to use, for family income, because I think that could provide a way into it. I think the challenge will be that that wasn't expressed as a purpose for that data, and so I don't know how we'll be able to get access to it or use it that way.
One more?
You're good. Yeah, open face.
I don't know. You gave me a thumbs up just now.
Chair.
I'm good. I don't know.
I know. Two quick follow-up to what you were saying, and also this is great. The comprehensiveness of the data is, again, being relatively new, it's good to have no picture is complete, but have a very, very good picture of things. More technical question about the free and reduced lunch and both the intersection of that. What's the overall proportion of that? Like how many? What is our actual district level? What's the percentage there? Mm-hmm. And then the interaction of that with both students of color and IEP. Like how much of this is stacking on a single person, and how much of these is three different distinct groups who are suffering and who are behind in different ways? So I'm really happy that you asked that question, because I was trying to figure out how I was going to work something in, and you just gave me an opening for it, guy. In addition to it being a good question. So the first is we have a huge range for economically disadvantaged across the district. I don't know if you know the district number off the top of your head. It's right around 20%. But I could get that specific number, and that might actually just be an interesting thing to include in this report in the future. But we see a huge intersection with that data and our students on an IEP. We don't see as big of an intersection, or as significant, I shouldn't say, as big of an intersection between that and the categories for race. That is not the usual trend for that data. Most districts actually see all of those points come together. And that doesn't mean that any of them are predictors, but there's some strong correlations there. One thing that we have an interesting, and we just found out about this distinction as a district, is that data about race and IEP data are not actually related in a statistically significant way in our district. And we're one of the only districts in the state that can say that.
Most districts get identified for disproportionality, where race actually makes you race other than white makes you much more likely to be placed on an individual education plan. And that is not the case in this district. And we just found that out. They actually told us that we were one of the worst offenders in that area in the state. And through checking their data, so they had us like 4.31 or something like that. There's a scale they use, or anything above a 3.0 is unacceptable. And they had us at a 4.31, and our actual data is 1.03. Everything about the data set they provided us was incorrect. And it's just because we have such a competent team of people who are very data literate that we were able to interrogate that data. So Christine, if you're watching. Hey, wait, if you're watching.
Any other, are you ready?
Oh yeah, whittled a lot off there, so thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
I noticed you covered it up though.
Yeah.
You didn't want me to steal it.
You're stealing all of the good ideas. I just want to say I like the format a lot too. I think my only sort of question around it is that sustainable for all these reports, 25 pages, but it's going to be great. And I especially liked the phrase, and I think this might help kind of what Kevin was asking earlier, is that you sort of said success is defined by the capacity for students to enter to further education and enter the workforce. So I really like that phrasing, because I think it does sort of say, like, we're not capturing alumni data. We should. It'd be great if we could. But this report is really only talking about the capacity building that the school is providing. I think there were a couple of things. You talked about graduation rate as one of the indicators, but you only mentioned the 4-year graduation rate. So I'm curious. I know that the state can track 5- and 6-year cohorts. And that would be an interesting look comparing statewide. You know, is that something where we graduate 88% of our students, but we don't capture any in the 4 years, but we don't capture anybody in years 5 and 6? I think that led me to the innovation piece. You talked a lot about Spanish immersion, but there's no conversation about flexible pathways. There's very little CTE conversation. And to me, I think seeing the number 52 or something like that was the number in tech centers, that seems really low for what is the total high school size again?
730.
730. So, you know, maybe it's higher than I realized at a 350 juniors and seniors, but I'm assuming there's no smaller.
The juniors and seniors are.
Well, the freshman class is really small, I think, this year, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because the Campbell Sump group was
60.
pretty small. But I think those are another way of sort of addressing that. What are the other things beyond test scores that the district is using to help meet this really important standard? Yeah, and I think you said it too early. Just I think the difference in the data is a lot of the VCAP transition and just kind of how it just doesn't necessarily connect. So I appreciate you explaining that.
Thank you.
One page. Oh, I can't look at it.
Steve, yeah, go ahead, Steve. Oh, I can't hear you. Wait, I wonder if it's a volume in the room thing. No.
Can someone else speak from the?
I can't hear Steve either.
Okay.
Keep trying, Steve.
No, I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear you. Log back in. Okay, he's gonna come back. Anyone else have questions while we're waiting for Steve?
I just wanted to build on what Ethan was saying. I was also focused on that number 53 of the technical schools, and I was curious how that compares to other schools, like adjacent districts to us. And I think one of the things we were all sort of thinking about or talking about, or a number of us are, is like how well we're preparing students for
a life here versus like, I wonder if we export more students here in Chittenden County than other places, particularly MMU, if we're, you know, getting them very ready for four-year colleges and then what? So I'd love to spend some time this year digging in on that and the needs of the community and the types of, not that kids shouldn't be entitled to grow up and move away as much as it breaks our hearts. You know, we want what they want, but if they want to make a life here, are we helping them set on a path where that's feasible?
Thank you. We even come back this week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
Is this a trend in Vermont for our young kids to move away and not come back? Like that's the trend.
There was, but I think our generation.
Then why are we doing
that? Come back 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years later.
There's a huge cohort in Huntington that's just come back. Steve, do you want to, I guess, if you want to try speaking again?
No.
Why don't you type it in the comments? Could you put a chat?
Yeah, we can read it for you, or you can text me and I can read it for you. Just while you're doing that, if you wanted to answer. So in our region, Essex and Burlington have a bigger percentage of students that access tech because it's at their, well, Burlington less, but Essex more, it's at their location. And so that is something that we don't have. So that will be a barrier unless we actually have tech in our building.
Is there any thought of adding tech to us?
Well,
Is that policy governance?
Well, it could be policy. I mean, it is, right. It is the day to day, right? But it is if the board set a direction that said we want tech to be more accessible.
But part of what you're doing with the maps, and this was recently in the news and the VSBA shared it, one of the maps is focused around where tech centers are.
One of the maps is focused around where tech centers are, and another map that we haven't seen yet is focused on regional comprehensive high schools, which would include tech in those regions. So I think there is a very clear concept statewide or in the broader education community that we want more tech-like hands-on learning for all kids. And we know that kids do better in those, most kids do better in those situations. And so,
that's why we need to bring play-based learning to the high school.
but that's the thing is I think flexible pathways is like state legislation. It's in place, and there was like such a high hope around the concept of it. And like, I mean, personalized learning plans are not something that you necessarily talk a lot about. I got a ninth grader, there's been no conversation, but tech centers, community-based learning, whatever it may be, all play-based learning, all falls under that umbrella of flexible pathways. And to me, that's the innovation that I think I kind of go back to Kevin's point about test scores. That's what I hear. AP test scores, essay, like that's the stuff that keeps getting reported, but that's not necessarily the stuff that's lifting up the bottom. Because we know, we've seen all the, the great stuff I think that our students are doing, having lots of success in post-secondary ed, but is there a missing piece? And so and to be perfectly honest, I'm a big fan of flexible pathways and worked in that arena in adult education for a long time, once or twice, right? But I think it's like the idea was that the state brought it into general education because they saw what the benefits were, and it has been somewhat, kind of bits and pieces here, and when someone's really excited, like that stuff, but not as a.
I mean, it's an unfunded mandate that the agency of education has never had. There are districts in the state that still don't have software to track ELPs and flexible pathways for their students for a law that was passed in 2013.
But you said
so. Don't say yeah. I mean,
you said earlier though, with the idea of comparing yourself to the highest districts, I don't want to necessarily think about what at this point other districts are struggling with. what I'm saying is that we have a great district. We have an opportunity where we're building off a tremendous foundation that we can do these things. We can lead the way, and we can show how some of these things can work, and not necessarily just say, oh, well, you know.
So there is data that flexible pathways actually doesn't uplift the students that need it, and it actually benefits the students who have more. So
Are you saying in the state, or is that data that is broad? Because I don't.
in the state, it's just
Well,
hard
and-
to get.
And
So
that would
so
say a
I
lot to the
think-
school
I think
system.
we're doing a lot to make sure that our kids with high needs we're closing those gaps. And I think that's really important to focus on. So, Steve, I don't have a question for you. Did you pop something in while we're having our argument here?
Can you hear me now? I just called in.
We can hear you.
All right. Yeah, sorry about that. Technical difficulties. But yeah, John, I did appreciate the report a lot. I do appreciate the data. Kind of echoed a lot of what everyone else says. Some of my questions are just what the data is actually saying. It seems like there's a bit of a gap in proficiency between English and math, especially in the lower grades. Are you in the administrative level thinking that there may need to be more resources allocated to math to bring up that gap?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm glad that you noticed that. We have some gaps in different places across the different district. I would say it's very common across the entire country to see math scores lagging literacy rates. So that's not any kind of defense of a difference, just kind of context for it. I think that, it is telling that the district changed its math program before it changed its literacy program. And I think right now what we really need to do is let teachers have that time with their instructional coaches and their collaborative teams to work through the continued implementation of that program. So Illustrative Mathematics is the name of that program. And in their trainings, they will tell you it takes 3 to 4 years to actually get the full implementation across the district and in classrooms. So typically you would see the first year or two pretty modest gains, and then see the curve really tilt up and the growth rates increase. I think I'm actually really encouraged when you look at the growth data that I included in the report in the area of math, that actually speaks to the work our teachers have done to get us ahead of that curve. And so I'm hopeful that next year that gap will be smaller. But I would say in terms of resources, which is the second part of your question, the board and the community here has been super supportive of our schools. And I would say the math program is an example of that, actually, where the district saw a need and we moved to purchase new materials and then support that purchase of materials and teachers and their implementation of it with instructional coaching. So does that answer all parts of the question, Steve?
For the mathematics, getting to the high school data, it seems like we're really just kind of relying on the SAT scores over the last 3 years. And in general, they look like they're slightly going down. But, in general, I'd say it's flat. And that's really the only area I saw nationals data put into the report as well. But I was just wondering if there'd be more ability to put additional high school data in that showed trends in high school, and then and to even break out the English and math for the SATs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I can answer your question. So when I look at data and changes over time, I'm always looking to see if there's a statistically significant difference. And there isn't between the 3 years of SAT data that's there. So there is a small drop from 2022, 23 to 2024, 25, but it's not meaningfully different. I would say an interesting thing, since you brought it up about SATs, and I believe I put this in the report as well, we administer the test to everyone. I mean, virtually everyone, 96% or so of our high school students take it. That is not the national trend at all. Actually, a lot of schools have what they call targeted administration for the SATs or student selected administration for SATs. And so that would actually artificially boost their scores. So when you make a comparison for us to the rest of the state or nationally with SATs, it's pretty positive. The VT cap data is an additional data point that I think is just really worthwhile looking at the high school level. You can look at the English, math, and science there compared to the state and see that. But I actually think for me, the most meaningful data from the high school is the proficiencies data. And that actually goes back to what Ethan was saying earlier. So this is the actual, I was going to say perception, but that's not enough. This is the informed judgment of the teachers that are working with these students and their ability to complete these really rigorous proficiency-based graduation requirements in a way that we as a community have defined what's important to us. And so actually out of all of the stats that we have for the high school, those are the ones that I would actually go to first in terms of evaluating the effectiveness of our program related to the ends. So I'm really sorry. I think you had a very specific question that I just provided commentary on, but I'm not sure I got to answer you completely.
Well, I mean, in general, just potentially getting more trend data in the high school. Like there's some in there, but seems like it was very trend intensive for K through 8, where I'm not necessarily seeing that with the high school data, but I mean, I could not be thoroughly understanding it either.
I can certainly make sure to include more trend data on a user report. Sorry, it's also hard for me to read and reference it on the fly.
I mean, there was, I think, 2 grades, like 9 and 11 that were highlighted in 1 year of those, but not necessarily like a trend of proficiency for those. And then beyond that, I guess my other question is if we could break out the math and science for the SATs and see a trend in those by any chance over years. If that's like even an option we have.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at this right now, Stephen, and you're correct. So we've got the 3-year trend for SATs, but I did not provide you with the 3-year trend for the Vermont assessment, and that is an oversight on my part. I am sorry. I would happily provide that as an addendum.
Great.
Thank you. So I
You want to do the SAT first?
Yeah. Yeah.
Steve, yes, you're good. Sorry, before we move on, Steve, you're good? Yeah, great.
Just a quick follow-up to SAT question. So we provide that, we've gone over this before, we pay for that for our students. But I know several students go on to continue to take that test looking for a higher score. For a whole myriad of reasons, right? And what colleges that they're looking at and whatnot. Do we get those final scores reported to us?
We do.
Okay,
Yep.
so this data includes those further.
It does.
Great.
I just have one more, John, the last section of the report, future reporting enhancements. I appreciate all of those areas that we're looking to develop longitudinal tracking systems for multi-year trends with our local assessments, career and technical education, and then enhanced tracking of student engagement and co-curricular participation. I also was pleased to see in just about all the school improvement plans that wanting to get a better sense of students' experience of belonging and engagement. And just want to say that if, how can we help with that? And because those are really great areas to be targeting. So not that you have to answer that right now, but just saying that those are really important areas. And if we could help, we'd like to do that.
Thank you.
The word that I wrote down is budget. So how does our progress in these areas, where do we need budgetary support to ensure that we have continued progress?
to be way more specific.
Yeah, that is an excellent specific question. So
You may not have an answer today, but as we're talking budget going forward, that's going to be helpful.
So that's my answer, because I am actually, as much as I'm learning all of these pieces, I'm, I'll say neck deep in budget preparation right now, and also learning more about not just about how we have resources allocated across the district, but how well those resources are aligned with the investment philosophy related to this, right? So if this is the product or, you know, a key piece of the ends, we should be able to tell that story with our budget. And so to Kevin's earlier question and my reference of, you know, 6 staff members, right? We can ideally get to a place as part of the budget process where we can actually reference this conversation and weigh trade-offs with budget choices.
One quick thing. I noticed the outliers of Brewster Pierce and Smiley on some of the VCAPs. Is there a theory behind that, either pedagogical or class size, class or school size, perhaps, given that those two are the smaller schools? What's the thinking on your end where that's happening?
Yeah, I don't actually know that I can explain it right now. I will say, I don't know if Andrew also can. I'm getting from his nonverbal cues. So they are smaller schools, but class size is pretty consistent across the district. So we don't see huge swings from one building to the other. And we utilize multi-age classrooms in all our schools. So it's hard to isolate a single thing from that level. But it is something that warrants further exploration.
I got one. All right. So when we look at like the reading for elementary, and we say we got this right from this school, this right from this school, do we go even deeper and look at classrooms? Like, hey, this class is doing 30%, this class is doing 35%, this class is doing 18%. Do we go in and check out what's going on in 18%?
So I set you up for this question. You didn't even know it. But earlier when I asked Michelle about the guiding coalition, so that, and Andrew mentioned data work earlier. So we have teacher teams looking at data across the district. We have school-based teams like that guiding coalition that Michelle referenced, looking at data across the district, like you were talking about, and beyond. I think also too, you know, the instructional coaching team works with teachers looking at their data and teams of teachers looking at their data. I think for us as a district, the connection of that data to that investment philosophy I was talking about is something that is really exciting to grow in that area. Or I'm really excited for us to grow in that area. So yes, the work is happening. I am really happy to say we're not a district of huge swings, right? Like we do not have, I'm trying to remember what the data profile is called, but there's a specific name in education for school profiles where you have super high performing classrooms and super low performing classrooms and like a desert in the middle. We do not experience that phenomena, and our data would not be this strong if we didn't have consistency across the district. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
If we were to, though, what does the intervention look like? Is the intervention coach coming into the classroom and helping out, or?
It could be one of the things. I mean, it really varies. You know, as John was saying, a lot of people are looking at all different sorts of levels of data. You know, teachers are looking at the data in their own classroom. In PLCs, they're looking at data between classrooms and kind of making some adjustments there. At the school level, the guiding coalition with the principals looking at kind of data across the different classrooms so that they can kind of target, you know, resources as needed. You know, to John's point, there's, you know, maybe with like a new teacher or something, you might see some larger discrepancies. You know, one of the strengths of our district is, I mean, we have some high caliber teachers. Doesn't mean that there isn't room for improvement, but we can look at that data, see where there might be some gaps are. And I would say probably one one of our biggest tools are the instructional coaches to go in there and work with those teachers. And that's connected with the supervision evaluation system where teachers are selecting and identifying these are the areas I need to work with, doing that in conjunction with the principal, but also getting support from peers, but also the coaches as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, there's something really like this is a nuanced conversation to have, because we don't use these assessments to find areas of teacher performance. We're really looking for the student data and to measure the health of our system. But sometimes we do surface areas where it's like, oh, I wonder what's happening, and it invites the question, and we get to go and have those conversations with teachers. I think that it's usually not the data that brings a problem to anybody's attention, however, right? So we have administrators in classrooms all the time. And the data is really a lagging indicator that something's not right. And so it's really usually the principal or an instructional coach or somebody else that's in the classroom that notices that something isn't working the way that it's supposed to. And I think that we have an administrative team and an instructional coaching team that can do that work. It actually prevents a lot of the phenomena that you were referencing about having to intervene when we discover a problem by looking at data.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Anything else? Well, I think we all really appreciated having the data embedded in the report. Made it really easy to follow and track, and so thank you for that innovation on the report. And
shall we vote?
We do need to vote. Thank you. All in favor of approving this monitoring report? You say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Survived my first one.
So
Next time.
see, that's why I did the hard one first. Bring on the financial liability.
We did give ourselves a lot of time to talk about this too, so we probably won't have that much time for future reports unless we find that we need it. We don't ever leave a stone unturned in this. The time is just a suggestion. All right, so we get to keep the floor.
It's true.
We had some community concerns last week about busing issues, and we want to do a couple of things. We want to get an update from you, and we also want to talk as a board a little bit about our role and how we can work in these kinds of situations.
Perfect. So I'm happy to share that anytime we have a major event that either surprises us or causes disruption, where we feel harm is done, relationship repair that needs to happen at scale, we do an after action review, right? And so it's a common practice, right? But we really look at what we call a major event timeline, clear findings that we have, and then corrective action that we have to take as a group. Sometimes this can be a formal process. Other times it's a more informal process, depending on the severity of what has happened. And so we are still in process, actually, in responding to the bus 6 and bus 25 situation that was brought before the board by community comment. Last week, I think it was 2 weeks ago, but at our last board meeting. And so I can give some additional context and a brief update on the actual kind of operations of the situation. And then happy to take any questions. One thing I want to be cautious of is about not going into specific student details, because that really wouldn't fit for our purpose and in a public setting. So we do have, two of the longest bus rides in the district are from Huntington to MMU and Camel's Hump Richmond Elementary campus. And historically, so we have a couple bus runs across the district, not just for Huntington, but across the entire district that are long, longer than ideal for us. So we have, I think there's 6 routes that at different points, we have students that are on the bus for about 40 or 45 minutes, okay? And historically, what we've done as a transportation department, because we can't be caught without enough bus drivers, is we actually have additional bus drivers on staff so that we can cover if is necessary. And then and same thing for vans, because we also we have a small van fleet to do special education transportation and other transportation. And our bus operations are an area of significant cost savings for us, which is actually why even with having a buffer built into the budget for staffing, it makes sense to do so. That said, we have been short-staffed in transportation for 3 years, and the level of short-staffedness has been increasing to the point, actually. So prior to this board meeting, the board meeting that this came up at 2 weeks ago, we had been talking about contingency planning if staffing didn't improve, because what's been happening to us is, in addition to being short-staffed in general, we have had a couple waves of illness with our van and our bus drivers. And so that means we've been clearing the transportation office out to actually run the buses. And so we have our transportation supervisor and director and our mechanics and dispatcher and everybody basically on a bus driving, which is actually really bad for us operationally and not sustainable in the least bit. So that is important context, because historically those extra people have been cycled through our longer bus routes as bus monitors when they're not needed to provide coverage for driving a route. But that has not happened for 3+ years now, unless there's been an acute problem. And we've actually reached the point now where even in the situation where we have an acute problem, we do not have transportation staff to put on a bus. So that has led to, in particular, one bus route, not consistent, but a history of student behavior feeling like it's been unaddressed and more parent complaints than our other bus routes, and that is the bus 25 route. The complaints are generally around kids roughhousing, inappropriate language, inappropriate technology use, and things like that. The majority of the kids on that bus are middle school students on the Richmond campus, and so that's been dealt with. Joe O'Brien has had parent meetings, they've done assigned seating, and that actually brings us to like the first kind of paradox that we face, which is an equity paradox, because transportation services are actually an equity lever we have as a district, making sure that we provide transportation that removes the barrier so that students can all get to school. And so what ends up happening is often the students who are struggling with behavior are the students that have the most acute need to be in school. But so removing their transportation services is a negative equity lever, but at the same time, allowing behavior to go unaddressed is a negative equity lever for everybody else on the bus, because it makes the bus ride less sustainable and less accessible for everybody else on the bus. So, ironically, in the few days before the incident that brought this forward, our HR director, Rebecca, and Joe O'Brien, the assistant principal at Campbell Sump, had been working on different approaches for how to staff a bus monitor on that and the bus 6 route.
Okay. Just one quick second, just to clarify something you said. Prior to the meeting where the issue was raised by some community comments, there had been history of complaints on these routes, so there had been documentation that there were issues on those routes.
So yes, and I would say you can say the same.
That's all. That's all I wanted to hear. Thanks.
And I will just +1 that and say you could say that about most of our routes. I would say after having reviewed it now, there were more for some routes than others, including bus 25.
Afternoon.
In the afternoon, yes. So then
in the morning.
Here's an interesting thing. So the incident that brought this forward was a morning incident, but virtually all of the complaints were about after the bus service. Okay, so then on Thursday, the 25th of September, we had a non-middle school student, so an elementary school student who was on the bus that experienced a crisis. That is what you heard mostly about from parents at the meeting on the 29th. And so that was a Thursday that happened. It was obviously not good. There was a lot of inappropriate language. There's a lot of inappropriate physical activity. You heard references in the meeting about a student swinging a water bottle around and hitting another student with it. So there's a lot of not good things happening on the bus that are not acceptable, shouldn't be happening on the bus. The bus driver did exactly what they were trained to do in terms of stopping the bus safely and then intervening to prevent the student from physically harming other students after radioing for help. And then we were very fortunate with the resources that we had in the area at the time. We were able to respond with another bus and bus driver and our transportation supervisor extremely quickly. And all of the other students were able to get off the bus and onto a different bus fast enough that they were on campus at Richmond within minutes, really, of when they would normally have arrived. At which point, Gretchen Muller, the principal at Campbell's Hump, was able to intervene with staff there to support students who were getting off the bus, and then also to intervene when the other bus showed up with the student that was in crisis. On the Monday of our meeting, we had some community communication in advance of the meeting, which you may not have read until after the meeting, but I forwarded to Edie, and Edie forwarded to you all, I think, honestly, maybe like 45 minutes before the meeting, which is shortly after it had gone to parents. The next morning, I actually was here in the morning and I met with all of the students. I waited with them and talked with them about what had been going on the bus. I got on the bus with them. They had a substitute driver that day, so the driver and I met, and then the driver and I talked with all the students about behavior on the bus, video monitoring, because a key lever for us when we're not staffed is to be able to monitor and respond to behavior via video. So we talked with the students about that. I kept calling them the tapes, and one of the kids told me I was old. As an aside.
Let's go to videotape.
Not at all. That afternoon, Joe O'Brien rode the bus to bus 6 and bus 25 to Huntington to supervise students. He also pre-met with the students and talked to them about behavior. The next day, we had an additional follow-up communication with families. The next day, which was Wednesday the 1st, I rode on the bus with all the kids just to observe and to talk with the students about behavior as well. Also to meet with the bus driver. And then really after that bus ride, Gretchen and I kind of passed the baton in terms of shorter term response that Joe and I had been managing, because as time intensive and as important as this was, there are like a whole host of issues at the start of the school year. And so in our response to this, Joe and I took the bus issue and Gretchen was on some other issues. So she took the baton in terms of long-term plan development and communication with families. Rebecca, our HR director, and all of our principals shared a temporary duty posting the principals of schools that would have staff able to make it to the bus in time, as it wouldn't have been shared out here or at Underhill. But the short-term duty posting that we have for bus monitors, which was something that we had come up with as a temporary measure to provide some supervision for the bus. And that process continues now. So we had a couple of key findings. The first was really just about the unacceptable behavior, both pre-incident and then during the incident, but then also about the lack of communication about that. So families actually had to wait quite a bit to have information in response to the incident that happened. But also families were communicating that they were upset about things happening on the bus and it wasn't responded to. So a couple of key failings there. We also had internal communication failings between the transportation department, the school, and central office. So not everybody knew every part of the puzzle when they needed to.
We had a board failing. Anytime a board member is told of an incident like this, it's up to us to reach out to John immediately. That's really one of our things that if we know about it and he doesn't know, but he might already know, but when we find out about something like this, especially if it's a time crisis, it is our responsibility to reach out to him. It is also our responsibility, if we hear about it from family members, to make sure that they are reaching out to the appropriate people. But once we have information, we have to share that information. That's our responsibility.
And then the last one for us was that because of that equity paradox I mentioned earlier, we were actually slow to follow our own procedure and implement progressive discipline. Really looking back at it, or not looking back at it, but what we would normally do when we have a student who's not able to consistently meet safety expectations, they would be removed from the environment temporarily. The other key finding we have actually is that some parts of this are short-term in their nature, but actually there is a longer-term fix needed here in terms of responding to and repairing the trust with the families that felt like they weren't heard, not just related to that incident, but actually for a significant period of time. I can keep going, but I'm realizing now I'm dumping a lot out on the table. So do you want me to pause for a minute or talk about?
I think that's all. Yeah, if you want to talk about anything that has been done to change that and what's happen going forward, and then.
So a couple pieces that have happened, and then a lot more that is coming related to the family and the repair of trust. So I think in the beginning, quick responses. So once this was surfaced as such a large issue, Joe and I, while we were taking point on it, basically agreed that nobody would go more than 8 hours without a response if it was related to the bus. So normally, if we have an email about something or a phone call and a voicemail about something, we try to get back to that in a day or so, but this felt like, no, we need to respond much more quickly when things related to the bus come up. And so he and I were in communication with each other a lot, and he and I were both in lots of communication with all of the families. We had some families who expressed preferring email communication, other families expressed phone conversation. I met a couple families for coffee. Actually, we had a listening session that I was running that was here. We had we had a couple families come for that just to talk about the busing issues. And so that was part of it as well. I did a home visit to talk to a child that was really nervous about getting back on the bus. And so these are all just kind of those individual strategies or individual approaches as part of that strategy of being responsive to what people were saying was important to them in the moment. And now really what has to happen, and this is why it's essential that Pecan went back to Gretchen, is all but 2 students who ride that bus are Camel's Hump students, and virtually all of the complaints were coming from Camel's Hump families. And so it's appropriate for her to take over both the staffing and planning for the solution, but also the communication and relationship repair with the families. She has been mostly focused to date on the staffing of supervision for the bus. But once that schedule is ironed out and in motion, then she's shifting gears to family communication and contact to continue that repair process. I didn't totally stick to my list. I'm sorry. I'm just going to review it really quickly.
There's a lot that we can't talk about in open meeting, and there's a lot that the board doesn't need to get involved in. But this felt like a board, an issue that came to the board. And so this is more detailed than we get in these kind of situations. So if folks have questions, we might say that's an executive session conversation, or that's, something else. But if anybody does have a question, happy to talk about this more. Yes, Kevin.
I don't know if I have a question. Just from like my perspective of the situation, the first time I heard about this was during public comment during a school board meeting. And to me,
Should have checked your email. Says the person with so many unread.
don't think I had one, and it was 6 a.m. in Vietnam when I joined the meeting. But I was a bit, blindsided by this situation and just, beside myself, right? How does this come to the board when nobody at the meeting has any response to it? Right. That to me, that just indicated a breakdown of communication between the administration and the board. And for an event that happened on a Thursday and then coming to a Monday board meeting, I was beside myself. And then realized that somebody on the board knew about it and didn't share it with the board. I feel like that was a major breakdown too. So I hope we learned from this. And I'm afraid to say, I have John A's cell phone number, but I don't have John M's cell phone number. And I feel like we all need to have, the bat phone, right? I had the bat phone. We're 15 years. There are things that come up, and you're like, I just need to make sure that the superintendent knows about this. And 10 out of 10 times he answered because he's taking everything seriously. So I think as a board, we should reflect on this. And if you hear something, you got to pick up the phone and either call Edie or John and say, this is happening, or at least you're aware of it, and, pass the information along. Incidents are going to happen. This is a serious incident. I don't want to downplay it, but you took care of it, you resolved it, you shared it with us, you're going to learn from it. The next incident will be something totally different, a water main, Underhill ID or something. And I would just, well, I know that one's not going to fail because we spent a lot of money on that.
You got to knock on wood over there, Kevin.
And we know how to handle water mains now. But my point is we need to make sure that it's an open dialogue both ways. Yeah. And when somebody brings up an issue, share it. And then I think that will help, for people to not be surprised and also hopefully address the issue sooner than it otherwise would.
No.
Well, I'm just going to jump out there. I apologize to the group because I was informed about it on Friday when Helen invited John and Edie and myself to Friday morning meeting. I had several parents talk with me. I encouraged them to go to public comment. And I actually am a little worried that I think this group is afraid of public comment. And when a crisis happens, there's no necessarily, the protocol has always, in my mind, been, you have a problem with the teacher, you talk to the teacher. If you have a problem with, after that, you talk to the principal. But that continues, you talk to the superintendent. My mistake, that protocol exists for other things like transportation. I'm certainly going to learn my lesson. I wish people would just say, instead of there was a board failing or there was a lack of communication, clearly it came from one town. So just say it, right? What happened here?
That's not the point. And
sure feels like it.
Well, yeah, I apologize for that. The public comment thing, I don't think anybody is afraid of public comment. I think that the families who didn't get a response until multiple days later, that's our failing as a district. And that's what we need to make sure never happens. We need families who experience any kind of crisis situation or difficult situation to have an immediate response or a close to immediate response from the district. And the district needs to be able to respond in other ways to ensure that our kids are safe. And so that's the issue. It's not, please, we want people to come to us with public comment. If that's what it takes to make a change in the district, that's what has to happen. But this was a crisis situation that, I would imagine could have come to us even with an appropriate response from the school, but to have no response from the school or from the district,
But that wasn't a board feeling, because if a bus stops and unloads all but one or two kids, that has to go to the superintendent, and that has to be addressed at that point. So it is not a board feeling. I'm sorry, John, it was a feeling at that point where a bus stopped, kids got off, and got onto a different bus. That's because of a crisis. That should have been addressed. So that whatever happened afterwards,
right. So there were multiple places that John should have been notified. And yeah, we were a backstop, right? We were the next day. We as a board were the next day. So there were the things that happened on that day, and John addressed those. Those were fails as well. So we had multiple opportunities to learn and grow and be better.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So in the morning, when we had some parents approach us at all school morning meeting, from there, because I'm brandy new.
Yeah.
Should I have
Today's your first day?
Today's my first day, so we can pretend that this part didn't happen. Should I have taken that to Gretchen, or should I have followed up with Gretchen after that conversation to say, hey, I heard this about a parent or from a parent from your school, or should I have gone directly there on Friday?
Yeah, in those situations, I generally notify both the principal and the superintendent, because my responsibility as a board member to make sure the superintendent knows, but it's my responsibility as a community member to make sure that the principal knows as well. And it's not me giving direction to the principal, which is what we never want to do, but it's informing them of a situation that has risen to a concern.
There is a little historic lack of clarity on this, I will say. I feel like the protocol has been, if a parent comes to you with a complaint, you say, have you talked to the child's teacher? Have you talked to your principal? Not that we are necessarily supposed to be ushering that information to inform someone. Very much my understanding of policy governance is, we can share it amongst us, but our first line of response should be to ask that community member to engage directly with the school. And I will not say that this is something that had been my assumption coming onto the board, but that was what I feel like I had learned as a member. So I do feel we need to get clear on what the expectation here is, so that people aren't in a position in the future where they aren't meeting an expectation that they're not clear on.
Yeah. So if somebody comes to me and says my kid's having problems with, the 7.5 grade teacher, because I don't want to pick up, because X, Y, and Z is happening, I'm not going to take that to the superintendent. I'm going to tell them, have you had these conversations? Right. Okay. If I hear that a kid broke their arm on the playground, I'm going to reach out to John and say, are you aware that this happened? I'm not going to even bother with the principal. I'm just going to be like, do you know that this happened? Right. So those are the things. So it's a balance of severity of the issue, right? Like I truly was driving by the MMU parking lot, and snow, and there were tire tracks and taillights off the side of the parking lot area. It was very clear that a student had been doing donuts and slid off the road, and I pull in. And this is last year. I texted the principal and the superintendent in the moment and said, just want you to know this just happened. I connected with the student and said, are you okay? The student said, yes, fine. I said, do you need any help? Can I call someone for you? I have my phone. I said, anybody with you? Yes. Are they okay? Yes. Would you like me to stay here with you? Right? So that was the situation, but I let people know, I didn't call the police. I didn't. So there are lots of different decisions that you just have to make in this position. And it's just based on the
Well, I think that to be fair to Ethan, that there's a level of discretion there, right? What you just described was a number of decision points that you had to make. And you use your intuition and experience, but it's not like there's a clear line of right and wrong. So I do think this has been a bit of an unfair conversation for Ethan, because to call him out as someone who didn't meet his, well, but I mean, right. So I will say, as you were talking about this, I was wondering if you were talking about me, because I was at the soccer field on Sunday and someone came to me the Sunday prior to our meeting and said, a lot of the parents in Huntington are upset about what's going on with the bus. And I have known for a long time that parents in Huntington are upset about the bus in general because the kids are on the bus for a long time. So as you were describing this, I'm thinking, oh dear, did I fall down on some duty here of not reporting what I should have reported? Which is all to say that I think that there's some element of gray area here and we're all navigating it to the best of our ability. Didn't know that their bus was stopped or whatever it was that happened, but there is an element of gray here that we're all trying to navigate with as much grace as we can.
Well said. I think Ethan's tough. I don't need to pick on him too much. I think it's a good topic to discuss, right, amongst us.
Helps clear the gray.
I think so. I think when you're running a meeting, it's the right thing to do to say, hey, I invited some people to the, I don't know if 0 or 100 are going to show up, but I, suggested they come to the meeting to talk about it. Right. You wouldn't want to come to a meeting like this and be overwhelmed with 100 people behind us. So we have to prepare for that. Right. So I think
we don't respond to community comment generally, so. Not in the moment.
But we give 5 minutes to 100 people. That's a very long meeting, right? We've had sign-in sheets, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you have a big topic, right? And sometimes you don't know if it's a big topic or not, but if you think there's a large cohort coming to talk, you need to make sure that you have a plan for that, just to run the meeting. And if it is a topic that is recent and, like it just happened, we always have the opportunity to add items to the agenda to talk about it. And like that could have been an opportunity to say, hey, we know this has just happened. It's not on the agenda, but we're going to put an item on the agenda to talk about plus 25 because that's a thing we want to engage in. So I think it can facilitate a better meeting on the topic if we're prepared for it. And then obviously if it's a safety issue or something like that and we hear about it, it's in my mind, it's a no doubter. You call John and say like this barely may have, caused some issues and they didn't seem like it got handled correctly. Share that with the superintendent and blindside him. Might have been a blindside for you on Friday. I don't know when you started to piece it together, but I think you had internally some challenges getting the full picture, right?
Yeah, I would just say it would not be a good thing if I found out about every community issue from you all. Right. So for me, when I said we had multiple communication failures, I was really just thinking at the operational level between the transportation department, the school, and myself. But certainly, if there's things brewing in the community, if people come up, check your email tonight. If you don't have my cell phone number, you will have it right after the meeting, so you can text me so that I have yours and let me know who you are. But even if it's just a short text communication or a phone call, bless you. It would have to be for an extraordinarily good reason for me not to pick up if I saw one of your names on my caller ID.
Is there actually kind of broader? I think it was one of the more recent ones as well as on the board. But we had the superintendent communication policy.
Mm-hmm.
Is it maybe essentially both ways? That if it's something that the superintendent feels would be communicated outside of board meetings, something at that level probably should be communicated back. Like that's kind of the general level of
what's in our board job description. That's a good question. We don't know that off the top.
Well, I think like in general, for like new board members, the past superintendent would, you might hear about this, just an incidental update. This happened. I sent a note out, so that there's just at least some level of awareness that a situation is going on. It may not require board action, but it's just incidental information. So
yeah, and the same in reverse. Like if it's possible, things didn't trickle up from someone right there on the playground, for example. That people going the other way.
God, I just know you guys are setting me up for tomorrow. We're gonna have a water main break. On the playground.
What if we break around?
Yeah.
Anything else on this one? All right, well, thank you. Apologies for I don't know. I'm glad that we're talking about this more because there are so many decision points that we as board members have to make, and this was much more complicated because there were missed communications within the district. So. Okay, our next agenda item is to approve the minutes on September 29th. Can I get a motion? Thank you, Allison. Second? Thank you, Sandra. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
It looks unanimous to me. Any abstentions? Start there. Any opposed?
Actually, I should probably abstain. I wasn't at the meeting, but I read the minutes. They look great.
Great.
Okay. That's their accuracy because I wasn't there, but
You didn't watch the recording?
I did not watch the recording. I'm sorry. I thought the minutes are very comprehensive.
Committee updates. Nothing on the regional advisory board, but they're pulling a meeting together. That's what we've heard.
So we are
That's what we've heard.
confirmed that I'm on the distribution list.
Okay, great.
So I will be informed.
VSBA, we have an annual business meeting coming up, and then we have an annual conference also coming up. We have two things. One is we put on the agenda, collecting the delegate. The other is like what they're called, resolutions. And normally at this meeting, we actually talk about the resolution. And I did email you all with a link during the meeting to the resolution. So for those of you that have devices in front of you, you can check your email. But what we have, with the feedback we have gotten in the past is we need time to actually look at those. So
there's 11 new resolutions and 17 that are continuing, but of the 17 that are supposed to be continuing, a number of them are being deleted because they've been rolled into an act that's already been passed. So of the 11 new ones, there's 3 or 4 of them that are asking the same exact thing. And it is, I can't remember what it's around. But if you scroll through it, you would see on page 2 that there's a couple of districts that are asking the same thing. And the VSBA the resolution board of the VSBA will say pass, no pass, or take no action at all. So you can see that on page 2 of the resolutions report. It will be the agenda is posted on the VSBA website right now, so you can see that. The meatiest part of the meeting will be the resolutions. It's going to take some time, and it starts at 6 o'clock on the 23rd, and it's all virtual.
So we can have a somewhat uninformed and unplanned discussion on general thoughts from board members on how you feel about the resolutions. Or we can choose a delegate from our board to vote for us. We have to do that anyway.
we have to choose a single delegate from our board to be our voice. We get one vote at the meeting. Tara's going to be at the meeting.
I will be at the meeting.
I will also be at the meeting, but I'm happy to nominate Tara to be our voice. Do folks want to have any conversation at all about the resolution? Oh, does everybody know what the resolutions are?
No.
So the Vermont School Board Association is our lobbying organization for schools in the state. And this helps them to know what levers they should be pushing, where they should be advocating for us as schools in the state. And so they have bylaws and short-term resolutions, long-term resolutions, both. And that's what they use. And so this is to add I think they're all short-term.
Yeah, they are short-term, but that's why there's 17 continuing, because they've been on the slate for years and nothing has changed statewide. But like I said, there's a number that are being removed because they've already been rolled into a law that's been passed.
Are you you're not on the committee?
I was not on this committee, no.
I was gonna say, if you were on the committee, then I would probably not nominate you to be our voice.
I was not on this committee, I was on the legislative.
So do folks want to at least have a short conversation about all of them? Do you want to just mention what they are? What do folks want? How do folks want to go with this? So this is all on me for not sharing this information in advance. My apologies. I have not read them either.
I'm sorry.
I know. Somebody remote shares. That was my.
We don't have time, right? It's either speak or
oh gosh. So okay, so that's fair. The meeting is not until the 23rd, which is 10 days from now, because I can do a little bit of math in my head. And so there is plenty of time to share thoughts with our voting delegate. If you have strong feelings or feelings at all about any of these, you can do that in an email. We can't have an email board conversation, but individuals can have conversations with other individuals. We have in the past generally concurred, but occasionally been outliers with the group on some of these items.
Laris is popping, sorry.
Also, historically, for people who might not know, we are invited to submit a resolution. We have in the past looked at writing a resolution, and then when we go and look through
we submitted 4 in 1 year.
Right.
And we stopped.
But then sometimes,
But
sometimes the thing that we're interested in is already in the works or is already on the list, or in cases of literacy, the legislature is like passing something that would have been what we were interested only weeks later. So that's just contextually why we're gonna talk about if we want to agree or not, but we're not present in those.
All right, so there's one just blaring at me. Vaping on school grounds. Are we having a chronic issue at our high school with vaping on school grounds?
Chronic issue?
I mean, I see every kid vaping, I think, but I don't know if they're kids or not these days, so I don't know.
Kids vape.
Yeah, but are they doing it in school?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do we have vape sensors in the bathroom?
I don't know the answer to that either, but that is something.
I have never been caught vaping in a school bathroom because I don't vape.
No, I've never been caught vaping in the bathroom either. Yeah, I can just tell you, vaping is something that the VPA is taking a strong stance on because it's an issue that virtually every high school in the state is struggling with.
Can I ask a quick question? So proposal number 10, for instance. This is about the closure of small schools. And it says that the board recommendation is to take no position.
Yeah.
So what they're saying is don't pass it as a resolution. But don't say, but they're not gonna say they were divided.
Okay.
So they don't have enough people that say, yes, we want this as a resolution, and they didn't have enough people on this board to say, no, we are gonna recommend against. So they're just gonna say, we're gonna go with whatever the majority goes with.
What is our delegate gonna go with?
Is it me? That's our delegate?
Hopefully it's the same.
It's Tara. I didn't read the resolution yet, so it's really hard for me to.
Vigorously oppose any legislation that would seek to force the consolidation of school districts or make it easier to force the closure of small schools, or impose minimum class sizes on small elementary schools.
Oh gosh, I couldn't support that.
That's how I feel also. So the take no position was a little, was not a position. It wasn't a strong enough position for me.
When it was discussed as a board, because the resolutions committee came back to the VSBA board, they didn't feel as if it was under their purview and to have the VSBA lobby for this resolution. So that's why they chose not to take a position on it.
Right now, the Commission on the Future of Public Schools is looking at creating a structure for when a school is going to be, for what input should be had when a school is being considered for being closed. And so they're trying to create that structure for the state. And until that actually happens, it's really hard to weigh in on anything, because first the commission has to do it, and then it has to become legislation. If there's going to be some kind of unless there's a model policy that becomes, so, I mean, it's very general, right? This resolution, and it's not, it's hard to have a really clear way to do it. We know in our district, when we consolidated our schools, it saved us money, gave us a better opportunity for education for all of our students, and made things more consistent. That's been our experience. So, but there are small schools across the state that are really sparse, like in sparsely populated areas, that have to stay open because those kids need to have access to elementary education. So, you know, this is like, can we use a scalpel, please? Right.
And part of this too is it guides the work that the staff of the VSBA is going to be doing once the legislative session starts. So when you look at a slate of 11, how much people power can you put behind some of these in the legislature, knowing that the legislature has already taken steps to do a number of these things?
But this particular resolution is a divisive resolution to try to, steer the VSBA towards supporting districts who are happy the way they are.
It looks like 8, 9, and
or
10 are all pretty much the same wording.
And I'm interested to know how our delegate is, going to vote on probably those 3, but anything where the VSBA has said, we'll let the members decide on this one. We're not going to recommend, members have to decide. So the VSBA took no position.
I wonder about 6 too, because it sounds like you're setting up for supporting the values and contributions of small community elementary schools. I feel like and they want to pass as a regular resolution. I feel like that sets up the argument for, well, we don't want to close our, like, if we're supporting we're supporting the values and contributions of small community elementary schools, we're also not going to want to close those.
Well, that's the bottom line.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I feel like that's where they're going with this. Yeah. But like, they didn't write that, but I feel like that's what that resolution was that's kind of the avenue they want to take.
Yeah. I think 7 kind of does that too.
Well, and where it says the resolutions committee, the resolutions committee of the VSBA can take up resolutions that maybe somebody heard at their own school board meeting, but didn't necessarily propose. So the resolutions committee will do it on the behalf of the school board. Take an idea and run with it.
So do folks want to have a longer conversation on this? Do folks want to send an email to me and Tara on your thoughts on this? Or do you just want to have I guess 2 options, quick conversation, longer conversation, send an email. Thoughts?
Is there a third where the two of you could determine how you're going to respond to the take no action and then share it?
I can't support those. So I would ask to not pass.
All the take no actions, you would represent the board with saying no,
Yes,
or would you abstain?
I would not abstain.
Say no.
I would say no. And honestly, that's how I presented at the VSBA board too when these came around. I was not supportive of these.
And I think conversely, yes on all the passes.
Yeah, I have to read those. It's the ones that say take no position stand out in my mind because that's where we had a substantial conversation. The others, right, like vaping on school grounds, of course. And Jimmy, I can tell you that we don't have alarms because my kid comes home and tells me what goes on in the bathroom.
I hope we get an alarm.
Make sure it's in the budget.
That's what the resolution is for.
Right, I would tell you, of course, I'd love to continue school meals, right? Like, I think that's been fantastic. The school funding
We just
formula
lost all the federal funding for it.
for the school meals.
School meals.
Oh,
Yeah, it's gonna cost us a lot more this year.
that's unfortunate. Where's our country going?
Which is why we need the state to cover it.
That's what I'm saying.
Put it
It's
down
gonna
to
cost
the
the state a lot more because we just lost a lot of federal money that was subsidizing the state's support. So that's on, yeah, so it's property taxes. Okay, we'll put something together, send it out to you.
Okay.
And then y'all can just reply directly to us.
Did we elect a?
We have not. No, who else is gonna be at the business meeting? Out of curiosity.
Can't guarantee I'm gonna be there. It's on my calendar, but I'm like, I might or may not end up being working. Just one of those.
I may or may not be sitting in a hockey game and listening to it, but
I'm gonna try my best to be there, I guess I should say.
actually there's a statement in our house.
Yeah. I'm also alone with the kids too, so.
Is that a meeting invitation that would have come out from
No, from the VSBA.
And did we have to,
You have to sign up for it.
yeah, but there's not a deadline.
We didn't. There was not a deadline.
There was a deadline.
If that came out before my time,
Right.
how can I go back to find it?
You can go to the
It's in the
VSBA
email that I
website.
just sent to you.
Okay. No.
There you go.
Multiple ways. Email, VSB website.
Oh, there it is, for administration right there.
There's no deadline.
So my short answer would be, I can't be the delegate, but I'm gonna try my best to be there because I don't want to be counted on for.
Great.
I think Steve just said vape detectors are $500 cash each.
How many bathrooms do we got?
Should just fundraise for it.
Sounds like a.
Sounds like something we could do. Thanks, Al.
We know what's happening. Do we really need detectives?
Well, we know when it's happening then.
So are you comfortable being there?
Exactly.
Because I'm not many for going, or do you prefer not to be there? Just are happy to. Okay, so, all in favor of Tara being, I'm nominating Tara. Are there other nominations? You aren't taking it. Okay, all in favor of Tara being our voting member?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Okay, so you're our voting member.
Enthusiastic.
I know, right?
Sorry, we had a little,
Very exciting.
Thanks, Sarah.
a little hiccup in our.
Get all the Howard trivia when you guys like nominate me for things.
HR committee,
We don't have an update from the HR committee since our last meeting. Community engagement.
Sure. I have a quick update. We met last week. Welcome, Helen, to our committee. Thanks for joining us. We had a discussion of John's superintendent outreach to date. We feel he's doing well with his outreach. In fact, he even came for our meeting a little bit late because he was engaging in said outreach. So proof of his excellence. We had quite a significant conversation around what the role of the committee should be in the engagement, sort of a perennial conversation about how much do we own individually as board members and how much should the committee take on. And we decided with so many fresh faces on the board and a new superintendent, the fact that we haven't had this conversation in a while, that we will be having this conversation briefly at the next meeting. So between now and our next, I think it's our next meeting, November 7th, is that the next meeting? Anyway.
November 27th.
Okay, so not our next meeting, our meeting after the next meeting. We're gonna just spend a little bit of time talking about how we're all engaging in our communities presently, sort of some philosophical questions about how much we should be doing individually versus how much should we have the board committee kind of taking the lead on, talking about just how you're showing up in your community and how you're thinking about community engagement as an elected member of the Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District Board of Directors. Then Edie reminded us that there's even a little bit in the job description about community engagement. So we'll revisit that. So put your thinking hats on about that, and looking forward to having a robust discussion about community engagement in our November meeting. That's all.
Finance and facilities, Lisa? Any updates?
No updates right now. Just the next meeting is November 13th.
Great. Any other business?
A quick one.
Great.
Eli, are you able to make any recommendations for something for someone to listen to on the ride home tonight?
Oh, I absolutely am able to make a great recommendation. There is a lovely little episode of a podcast called A Mount Mansfield Minute that you can listen to right now, where you can hear from your student representatives, me, Addie, and our new student board rep, Jack. It was a great conversation. Miss P and Mr. Muldoon are pretty good interviewers, I dare say, and I think that overall you will love the podcast. So highly recommend. It's a great listen.
It's true. I think Eli's going to take over the podcast.
Watch out. I'm coming for it.
Is Miss P Nora? Is that what it's
Yes.
Okay.
Great. Any other business?
I just want to say this was a great meeting. Like, I really appreciated the level of detail in the report. I really appreciated the level of discussion and engagement in this meeting. Appreciated that we had a lot of community members, and it makes me excited for this season of meetings ahead.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
See you, Lou.
Have a great night, everybody. Happy Monday.